ready to dive into ancient Rome.
Hmm.
Emperors, gladiators, all that jazz. But have you ever wondered how this, like, small city-state became this giant empire?
It's really incredible when you think about it. I mean, even before Rome was founded, the place we now call Italy,
Mm.
it was already a melting pot of cultures.
Oh, really? So it wasn't just empty fields waiting for, Romulus and Remus.
Not at all. There were sophisticated societies already there, like the Etruscans. Powerful people.
Etruscans. Vaguely rings a bell.
Right. But they were a big deal. They had their own art, engineering, even gladiatorial combat, which, fun fact, they actually passed down to the Romans.
Huh. So gladiators weren't even originally a Roman thing.
Nope. And another thing we got from them, those Roman numerals, on clocks and buildings,
Mhm.
totally Etruscan.
Wow. This deep dive is already changing everything I thought I knew. Okay, but we've got to talk Romulus and Remus. Twin brothers raised by a wolf. Pretty sure I got that part right.
Yeah, that's the classic founding myth, probably more legend than fact. But hey, every good story needs a good origin story, right?
True, true. So
Yeah.
Romulus, he founds Rome, needs people to live there. How'd he convince them to move to a city that didn't even really exist yet?
He was surprisingly open-minded about it, welcomed everyone. Outcasts, refugees, anyone looking for a new start. Rome was built on diversity from day one.
Interesting. A city for the outsiders, huh? That explains a thing or two about their ambition.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you have this mix of people, a city on the rise, but how do they go from a city-state to, the Roman Empire?
That's a story for the ages. Roman expansion was this long, complex process, but one of the most pivotal chapters has got to be the Punic Wars against Carthage.
Carthage, wasn't that, like, in North Africa?
Right. And get this, they had a powerful navy and, wait for it, war elephants.
The elephants. Okay, you've got my attention. Tell me more.
So you've got Hannibal, this brilliant Carthaginian general, leading his army, elephants and all, over the Alps. It's insane. He dealt some serious blows to the Romans. I mean, we're talking crushing defeats here.
I bet. Elephants charging through Roman formations, that's gotta be intense. But if I'm remembering right, Rome wins in the end, right?
3 grueling wars. But yeah, they ultimately crushed Carthage.
So I guess those victories were more than just about, like, bragging rights, huh?
Oh, absolutely. It showed the whole world that Rome was a force to be reckoned with. It totally changed their status on the world stage.
It really is wild to think about them going from, like, underdog to top dog on the world stage. But okay, so they've conquered all this territory. Now they've got to figure out how to actually run it. Did they just make everyone, do things the Roman way?
Well, the Romans, for all their military might, they weren't dummies. They understood that forcing their culture on everyone wouldn't really work. So they were, well, surprisingly flexible.
Flexible. Like, how so?
Like, they let the conquered people keep a lot of their own customs, even some of their local governments.
So it was kind of like, okay, you can keep your weird local traditions just as long as you acknowledge Rome's the boss and you pay your taxes.
Pretty much. And that's what's so cool. You ended up with this really diverse mix of cultures within the empire. A blend of Roman influence, but with all these local flavors.
And that brings us to, like, Romanization. Everyone always talks about that. But it wasn't like some mass toga-wearing campaign, right?
No.
What did that actually look like?
It was more of a, gradual thing. Over centuries, really. Roman culture, their language, their ideas, they kind of spread out naturally in some ways. Building roads helped a lot, connected different areas, made trade easier.
Roads, infrastructure, those Romans sure loved to build. But it wasn't just the physical stuff, right? Didn't their legal system also have a huge impact?
Oh, yeah, for sure. They had this whole system of law, written code, legal principles, courts, the works. And that idea of innocent until proven guilty that we still have today, that actually has roots in Roman law.
Wow, I never realized that. So the Romans are building roads, spreading their laws, and of course there's Latin, Veni Vidi Vici, right?
Exactly. Latin became the language for administration, law, trade. It wasn't just forced on people either. It was more organic than that. Merchants, soldiers, even slaves, they were all interacting and spreading the language naturally.
It's amazing how these everyday things could have such a huge impact shaping Western civilization. But okay, the Romans, they weren't just like cultural copy machines, right? They picked up things from other cultures too.
Oh, totally. The Romans were like cultural sponges. They saw something they liked, they adopted it, and made it their own, like their gods, for example.
Wait, weren't most of the Roman gods just like Greek gods with new names.
A lot of them, yeah.
No?
Jupiter, Juno, pretty much Zeus and Hera with a Roman makeover. But they also took in gods and religious practices from all over the empire, created this really fascinating blend of beliefs.
So the Romans were open to borrowing good ideas wherever they found them.
Exactly. They knew a good thing when they saw it. And this brings me to one of my favorite examples, the Garamantes.
Garamantes, who were they?
So the Garamantes were this ancient civilization that lived in, get this, the Sahara Desert.
The Sahara. Talk about a tough neighborhood.
Right. But here's the thing. These guys figured out how to farm in the desert centuries before modern techniques. They had this incredible system of underground aqueducts to tap into hidden water sources.
No way. Farming in the Sahara. That's amazing.
Yeah.
What did the Romans think about that?
They were blown away. The Romans were so impressed, they actually made the Garamantes their allies.
That's a good reminder that, even the Romans could learn a thing or two from other cultures. It wasn't all just conquest and domination. They were willing to learn and adapt. And speaking of adapting, let's talk about the things that made Rome, well, Rome, expert speaker. So we've talked about their adaptability, their willingness to learn. But what about Rome's, greatest hits? What made them so incredible?
Oh man, where do we even begin? Their achievement, I mean, they're legendary, but their legal system, that's a big one. It was surprisingly sophisticated for the time they had written. Codes, principles, courts, the whole shebang.
Didn't they have that whole innocent until proven guilty thing? That seems crazy advanced for, back then.
Exactly. That idea, it has roots in Roman law. They really believed in due process. Everyone deserved a fair hearing, even if they were accused of a crime. That had a huge impact, even on legal systems today.
Wow, that's actually incredible. Okay, what about those aqueducts? Those are always a big topic when we talk about Rome. Were they really that big of a deal?
Oh, they were a game changer. And not just because of the engineering, which was mind-blowing on its own. Just picture this. These channels and pipes stretching hundreds of miles in some cases, bringing fresh water to all these Roman cities. That's insane.
Yeah, without modern tools and stuff, it's hard to imagine how they pulled that off. It's seriously impressive. But even with all this amazing stuff they accomplished, the law, the aqueducts, their culture, empires don't last forever, right? What happened? Why did Rome fall? Was it like one big thing or...
It was less of a sudden collapse and more like a slow burn. Think centuries, not decades. By the 4th and 5th centuries AD, Rome was dealing with a whole bunch of problems, both from inside and out.
Okay, so what were the biggest issues? What pushed them over the edge?
Well, for starters, there was constant pressure on their borders. All these different groups, the Romans called them barbarians, but,
Right, not exactly the most politically correct term these days.
Exactly. And it wasn't like these were mindless invaders either. They had their own cultures, their own reasons for pushing against the empire. But for Rome, it was a constant threat they couldn't ignore.
So you've got all this external pressure. What was happening within Rome at the same time?
Internally, it was a mess, honestly. Economic instability, corrupt officials, you name it. Plus, they had a string of really ineffective emperors. Imagine trying to rule this massive empire stretching from Britain to North Africa, and you can't even keep your own government in check. It was a recipe for disaster.
It sounds like it. So external threats and internal struggles. Anything else? Didn't plagues also play a role?
Oh, yeah, I almost forgot. They had some devastating plagues during that time period, wiped out huge chunks of the population, wrecked the economy. It was like one thing after another.
To talk about a rough couple of centuries. Invasions, a crumbling economy, corrupt leaders, plagues. It's hard to imagine anything good coming out of all that.
It's true, things were pretty bleak. But even in decline, Rome's legacy, it lived on. The Byzantine Empire in the East, they carried the torch for centuries, preserved those Roman traditions and adapted them. And even in the West, where things were more fragmented, their influence on law, language, culture, it remained.
So even though the Roman Empire itself eventually crumbled, its impact, it's still felt today,
Yeah.
all over the world.
Exactly. And that's what's so amazing about these deep dives, right? We can look back at these ancient civilizations, learn from their successes, learn from their failures, and maybe, just maybe, gain a little perspective on our own world today.
Kind of said it better myself. From those scrappy beginnings to becoming a global superpower, exploring the good, the bad, the downright fascinating, it's been quite a journey through the Roman Empire. What will you explore next?